Hey, we're live. What's up, everybody? West Variety ShYo. Welcome. This is, I believe, episode number 8. And today I have an exciting guest from the UK and parts about quite a bit of history. We'll get to that in just a second. Before I jump into there, a few events that I have coming up. Flower of Life Festival in Artemis, Pennsylvania, out at the Four Quarters. I believe I said it right. Four Quarters Farm out there. Check it out on Facebook if you're in that area. Come hang out. I'm playing, I think it's a 3-day deal. I'm playing Saturday night, I believe 11 to 12, something like that. So, but check out all the details on Facebook and come say what's up. And there'll be, for the first time ever, glowing yo-yos from me. Outside of that, the following weekend, a couple things coming up. Regional Burn in Tennessee called Serendipity, and then that's Saturday actually, and then Friday night is I think that's the 27th, whatever Friday is that weekend. We'll be in Tennessee at the Iris Brewery or Brew House, kind of like a brew house warehouse sort of event space, and be doing that with Fat Rabbit and Josh Wildorf and some other guys. So going to be cool and gals, and yeah, it's going to be a cool show. So those are a couple shows coming up. Check them out. And then aside from that, we are going to hop right in with Chris BadHabit. And Chris, I've known him, let's see, I don't know, it's been a couple years. I've known you, man, and mostly back and forth, internet stuff, but sharing the if nothing else, the label owner, label vibe kind of thing. And fire away, man. Tell people a little bit about yourself, and then let's hang out a little bit.
Yo, hi. Hi, Wes. Hi, Kelly. First and foremost, thanks for letting me be part of the show. It's very laid back. It's got a good vibe. I'm Chris BadHabit. I run a record label in the UK called BadHabit Musik. Also, we're an events company, a DJ agency, and we deal with production. But mainly it's about the music. And I've been running the label for around 4 years now, and this is really what we're about. You know, it's been a long time for me. I've been in the music industry for near on 25 years, on and off, and good to be back. And it seems to be a good time to be back. You know, there's so much good music around, and yeah, it's good. Thanks again.
Welcome.
Yeah, you bet, man. And we also have Rob on who. So let's see here. Hey, Chris, before we get too far, you did mention your label, BadHabit Musik. Tell people how to, and I know you DJ as well, so before we get too far down the road, tell people how they can find you, like a website address or whatever the best spot is. And people like to fish around and check that stuff out while we're talking sometimes.
Oh, cool. Well, the website for BadHabit Musik is www.badhabitmusic, spelled MUZIK, UK.com. So it's badhabitmusicuk.com, and on Facebook, BadHabit Musik, 3 separate words. And we have our BadHabit DJs, which is a Facebook page as well. But
Cool.
You can hook up with us on SoundCloud and via the website.
Check him out. Follow him. Find him. Blast him. All right, dude. So tell me what else is going on. What's you talked about the label? I guess I'm always interested. What's I definitely appreciate all the promos you've sent our way over, especially the last year. That probably the biggest one for me has been that Sanction tune. Maybe you could just start there and tell me a little bit about the background on that, and then talk a little bit about the label, some of the artists, you know, whatever.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, the Sanction track, I've been waiting for probably a year or two for Sanction to come up with a track for us for the label. He's a very, very prominent producer in the UK, and has got a very good reputation. Always puts out a lot of good quality material. And so when Never Had a Love came up and was offered to me, I jumped on it. It was a long time in the waiting, but it's been a very, very powerful track. We had a lot of support from DJ Magazine. It almost made Tune of the Month. Again, hit the top of the charts on the UK breaks charts in Track It Down. So yeah, it's been a great track. And there's a follow-up tune, which I think I sent you guys pre-promo last week in a link. But yeah, Sanctions, he's got a couple of tracks coming out in the future, and we're pleased to have him on board the label, you know, to join numerous artists which we've been building up over the last 4 years. So yeah, it's good. We're in a good place. We've got good artists now. We've built up, and from my perspective, as a label boss, it's all about sourcing the right artists, but also giving some artists a break. You know, it's obviously we want to put out quality tracks every time, but at the same time, I'm all for the new blood coming through and releasing some sort of varied stuff. You know, very variety, multi-genre label. So we cover all angles. You know, so yeah, that's where we are at the moment. Pushing forward.
More like I know you and I talk quite a bit about different, you know, like the focus of a label, whether it's a genre-focused label or beyond that. And so I think you and I probably met, as I've met many people, through traditional breaks or breakbeat, you know, in that range, in the 25 to 130 BPM type range. And I know you've done some variety, of course, around that. I've heard some of them in the promos. So what is you know, in terms of your, you know, you said 25 years, right? That's a long time. So maybe like you know, have you what are the genres you've liked the most, I guess, over the years, and kind of maybe some are extinct now, maybe some are still going, but you know, just talk a little bit about like kind of some of the cycles music has gone through, in particular with your label.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I think the label, going back, one of the reasons I launched it was because there was a friend of mine, Richie, again, one of our main artists, Strange Rollers. We met only in the last 4 years. He's a very well-known underground producer and DJ, and when we started off, it was him actually who gave us the push by sending me a lot of the breakbeat, new school break sound that I'd lost, you know, really, and not actually searching different genres and sounds, because in the UK, unlike America, you know, it's very easy for things to be labelled with the EDM sort of branch. In the UK, it is very genre. It is very much around the genres. I know it's different. We actually chatted about this the other day. I remember.
I won't go down the genre rabbit hole.
No, we won't mention the genre.
Yeah, because last time when we had Rob Analyze on, I think we might have talked about genres for 25 minutes. So I'll spare everybody that today, and really just, you know, an opportunity for you to kind of maybe say some of the different genres that you've got going on the label. Like I know you've got one of my buddies here in California, Otter. I suspect he's probably, you know, I know he's up and coming producer, so I suspect he's one of the guys that, you know, you give a shot, you know, who's looking for labels and producing good sounds and growing with you guys. I see that, right?
Hey Chris,
yeah,
Funk It Up
definitely.
Trailers is the one that I like the best. The Otter tune with Strange
Sorry,
Rollers,
Kelly.
Funk It Up.
Yeah, no, it's really good. Yeah, thanks. It's yeah, I think Otter really. I was going to say, you know, with Otter, he's been around for many years, and he's a very talented producer. Made a variety of actual records that we put out on our label now, apart from the breaks, and he's actually done some UK garage sounds. So he's, you know, he's testing the waters. He's very talented. But my actual sort of background from music, I started off sort of back in the early '80s. Obviously, being the ripe age that I am, the music was obviously ever changing, and from hip hop leading on to soulful, disco, as well as obviously then the acid house years, and then on to the old school years. There's been such a variety of music that's come out in the UK, and I feel, you know, really proud to be quite part of it. You know, in whatever version it's came out on, which has been popular from, you know, decade to decade. You know, with old school now still being quite popular, and people thinking it's a bit of a dying sound, the rave industry, but you know, my friends like Slipmat, they're still playing out week in, week out, still playing the old sounds. And what people forget is that when people get married and they move on, and as they're getting older, like myself, their kids have been brought up listening to the sounds that we played, and in turn now they're going out to clubs listening to the music that their parents were actually listening to, and it's just gone full circle. So music's, you know, it's a lovely thing the way that it can go full circle. It's just a time perspective thing, you know.
Yeah, I mean that's totally cool, isn't it? Don't you think that's like? I mean, I've you got a few years on me in the industry, but I'm not brand new at it, and so I was on I spoke on a panel this past weekend. There were several panels, but I spoke on one that talked a lot about just uh, whatever level of success someone is at, whether independent or commercial or corporate or whatever in the music business particularly, and they were just talking a lot about uh, how 10 and 15 year spans, and most of the audience was much less involved. They were obviously there to learn some things or validate things that they're doing that are working or aren't working, and try to kind of mold
Yeah.
from there. And I think one time I was watching a panel in Vegas with at the EDM Biz conference, and Carl Cox was talking, and it was funny when you were talking about some of those genres. It occurred to me that those are like whole movements, and Carl Cox was funny in that way.
Yeah.
He was like, I've been DJing so long and into music for so long that I don't even know it's, what it started at. Maybe disco, I think, was maybe what he referenced as the first thing for him. And I think that's really cool. It's just like you said, and now I don't know if he has kids or not, but if he did, he's certainly of the age where they would be probably even past their entry into college and music and stuff like that, given average ages. But that's pretty cool. So I mean, along those lines, like you were talking about UK, and when you say rave, like some people say, UK rave or rave scene is kind of dead. Are you talking like electronic music overall, or what exactly does that mean?
Well, really, more the old school sound from sort of around sort of 89 to sort of 94, and there was a lot of change within the music. It went from hardcore, well, it went out of house into hardcore, and then obviously formed into drum and bass. But it was a great time around the early 90s because there was a lot of new producers and old producers, trying something new, going along. And in the UK, we're a very close community. Music's, it's a big part of the UK, and the club culture is as well. And obviously, when this all emerged in the sort of the mid 80s, late 80s, it was a foundation, of a lot of the music which is being played today. So we're very fortunate to being around at that time. But at the same time, as we just mentioned, there's lots of new blood coming through, where the sound's still being played week in, week out. The rave sound itself.
So you're literally talking like rave era. You're not lumping in like all EDM in that. So that's interesting. There's still guys that are out there really basically playing a classic sound, right?
Definitely. Well, a lot of these guys have probably played the same record sort of 10,000 times, but it's their passion, it's their flavour, and it just proves that after all these years, sort of 25 years or so, that people still love the sounds. Fair enough, not to the same degree as popular music, but there's always going to be an underground network of people who love a different style and a different sound, but also continue to like it. Even though people are getting older, some of the age groups to a lot of the events, it's so mixed, and it's so good to see. Like I said, lots of young kids getting into that sound that they may have heard, growing up that their parents have played. So, but still enjoying it, side by side out in the festival fields, dancing to sort of 5,000-10,000 people.
Wow, that's pretty wild. I would say we've got a. I was just listening to a podcast earlier today. I don't know when it was from. Maybe probably sometime in the last week. But they were talking about pros and cons and some craziness around just the idea of nostalgia. I thought that was pretty interesting because that you're hitting on that, today as we're chatting, and it was pretty interesting that one school of thought was that nostalgia is, this evil thing because it prevents people from progressing forward. But then, some of the other thoughts were that it during even good times or bad times, being nostalgic can remind people of how things possibly were and could probably be again, maybe not in the same way, but but just in terms of things being positive. I don't know. I thought it was kind of interesting that you're talking about there's still this throwback to there, because I see some pretty good throwback shows, I would say, here in the U.S., but I really they're not generally certainly not as big as like some of the stuff you're talking about, and it's rarely showcased at any kind of any of the major festivals. You know, it's pretty much all I would say you know, 130, 132, maybe down to 125 or something. You know, a lot of some bass house is still in the smaller stages, but then really still the what people think of as that big room EDM sound, that kind of thing. Although you may find this interesting, I just heard I was listening to a set from this EDC in New York, and the I don't know what they called the music, but it was literally gabber with dubstep instrument, you know, sort of dubstep bass, sort of glitchy instrumentation of the more modern day. But speed-wise, it was clearly, definitely gabber or hardcore techno. You have any of that going around over there?
Another artist who's based in Detroit called Megahertz. He came out of the drum and bass scene predominantly, and then obviously very popular over the last 2 or 3 years with the dubstep scene. But where it's been changing a lot, and I know over in the States, each county has a different sound almost. But it was getting really hard, and he's doing very well around the Detroit area. And one of the tracks we released last year, I think it was when I first heard it, it was almost like a drum and bass or a gabber track, about 180 beats a minute. But it had a drum step feel to it, so I think he called it drum step. So don't quote me on that, but maybe it was a slowed down version of that you may have heard. But
well, maybe, I mean, it was. I mean, I definitely hear a lot of different styles of music as you do, but I can tell you it was not one that I had heard being played to 10,000 person audience in some time. So perhaps it's out there, and I'm just not at those shows, and I happen to watch this set. You know, there's a ton of stuff out there.
Oh, right.
You can't go to everything, obviously, but I did think it was interesting in the context of you talking about you know, there being kids out there that so the kids, you know, in the U.S. anyway, the kids that are typically at, you know, the Insomniac, that promotion that runs those EDC festivals and many other things, but you know, it's definitely a young crowd, and I don't mean young like, you know, 25 to 30. I mean, it's like young, like whatever age can get in. It's like predominantly that. It's quite a bit of that. And so I thought, you know, when you think about it, if you're 18 to 21 years old and you're going out and you're listening essentially to gabber, it's probably, I know you don't want to call it gabber, I'm sure of that. It's called something else, I'm sure, but it is definitely that throwback to, you know, you're 18 years old, then you're the kids of somebody who's probably, you know, maybe 40 to 50 years old, right in that range. And so they would have definitely been, if they were into rave when rave got going in the U.S., you know, that would have been their entry way into electronic music. I mean, gabber was massive here in terms of the warehouse rave. I mean, that was the first I heard. It was at 145, 150, 155 beat per minute, and nothing to do with jungle, nothing to do with drum and bass at all. You know, like just pounding, like. Somewhat noisy, you know, but interesting. So
yeah, I think when you're talking about that, because I speak to Curious, he's our main man out in LA, Curious, who was running the Future Jungle Sound for us out there.
Oh yeah,
he was a really good reputation. Him and Apex One have been running events out of LA for near on 25 years, I believe. But he was saying to me the very same thing. You know, it was more the gabber, the rave sound at first before they were sort of then moving on to the drum and bass sound that, you know, those guys have been sort of holding down for decades and still do. You know, still busy with week
well,
out. You know.
It doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me in the least because I was when I was over in India, I went to a show that I wasn't playing at. I went to it was an MTV Block Party show, and this guy DJ Blend from Texas was playing. He's a U.S. guy, and he's got a pretty interesting shtick going on. And you know, his music that he plays, I think it's a lot of edits he does himself, but it's also a lot of, you know, popular tunes, but also very like just banging, you know. And so it doesn't surprise me at all that would happen because I think the speeding things up is a natural evolution when people start to get bored with a style or a genre, you go speed it up, and it's got a lot of the same soul and flavor, but just a faster swing to it and tempo, and obviously, if you're listening to it under any kind of influence, that can be a really interesting experience as well, and not seem so fast or faster, etc. So yeah, that's kind of cool. Hey, Chris, I gotta ask you. I'm getting a little bit, and Kelly hit me up. We're getting a little bit of that gargle again, like the robot on your voice. So maybe we can take just a quick section when you dropped out and came back in the other time. It helped quite a bit, and maybe we could do that one more time. See real quick. Yeah, no big deal. We'll have a brief intermission.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Cool, man. Kelly, were you were hearing that as well?
Yeah. Do you see my face? I'm like, what is that?
Yeah, well, hey, nothing like broadcasting your technical intermissions. So, well, Kelly and I can just chat for a little bit until Chris comes back in. It's a true intermission. How's boat life today, Kelly?
Boat life is awesome. The sun has come out, and I can enjoy the sunshine once again. I think you could tell by my text messages that I was a little bit off.
What's the temp there today?
Let's see.
Well, it's really just what do you got going there?
I'm gonna say it's 67, and the Weather Channel is gonna prove me wrong at 62.
We're in the middle of May gray here. Yeah, we're not having a good time here. We've got, if you come out to San Diego, this is a brief San Diego advertisement intermission. If you come out to San Diego in May or June, it's like we call it May is May gray and June is June gloom. So I'm just warning you now, because I have some friends and maybe they'll watch this. They're coming out in June, so I'm just warning you now. It's really hit or miss. But the nice part is usually the sun will breach during the day. Are you back with us, Chris?
Yeah, I'm back with you. Can you hear me okay?
I'm good.
Crystal clear, man. So, now we know how to get rid of robot voice. We just take a brief intermission, and Kelly and I chat a little bit, and you hop out and in, and we'll carry on.
It's all laid back on the variety show, Wes. You know that.
Hey, so so about this nostalgia and classic stuff, and you've got some history, and I definitely want to learn a little bit more myself. But was disco was disco, for example, as big of a transition or influence to house music in the UK, or kind of how did that come about, to your recollection?
Well, there's always lots of views with this. The same as when people say, who invented one sound or a certain sound. For example, when people say they invented the acid house sound, well, in fairness, the only person who invented the acid house sound was actually Roland, who made the 808 machine. It was their technicians who actually invented the sound. It wasn't the DJ, but for example. So, but yeah, the sound for me, I think disco was really the pioneering. Disco was the pioneer for the house and almost the garage sounds, pre-rave. Because it was disco, it was all about the BPM, the tempo. Obviously, to a degree, there was obviously, especially if you look at the Saturday Night Fever and beyond, the late 70s.
Right.
That sound. There was obviously a club culture. There was a bit of a drug culture with it as well, and everybody was out having the time of their lives. But I think personally, for me, songs like Donna Summer, I Feel Love, they had so much progression and were so ahead of their time that even if you play it now in a club, in one of the best clubs in the UK or anywhere around the world, when that track's dropped, it will always keep people going, because it's got so much power and passion. And again, it was off the back of the disco sound. And then obviously progressed. It went more electronic in the early 80s. But the disco sound to me was really the pioneer of where it changed into the house sounds, sort of late 85, 86, or 87. This is when it sort of crossed over to me, and you could call it more house than disco. But like anything, they all come from the same family tree. All the music we're listening to now, it all comes from the same family tree. But disco to me was a big influence.
Whoops! I watched this documentary recently on the origins of a lot of this music. I think maybe it was a subsection of something from covering Richie Hawtin or Carl Cox or one of the big guys, some hour-long thing on YouTube, and a lot of it was about talking about that progression from disco in Chicago into the utilization, like you said, of the Roland drum machines, particularly 909 and 808, and shaping those things. And I do think I'm with you on the Roland thing. I see, every time I see these shirts, I just get a chuckle. Like I'm not gonna go rant about it, but I get a chuckle out of it'll be like the use of the word 808 or something like that, and who it was started by. And I always think to myself, I'm pretty sure it was started by like two Japanese guys somewhere in Tokyo, because they were the sound designers, exactly. And they're the ones that put the 808, the machine together, the TR-808. So I think it's kind of like, maybe we should, because when 808 day comes around, you very rarely hear. I think the guy, it's definitely two Japanese guys, and Takanori something I think is one of the guys I can remember kind of, but yeah, that's kind of funny along those lines. But also interesting about disco is that, you hear tons of pieces of it and throwbacks in all kinds of music, and then I always kind of wonder if songs like really anything. So take a song that gets I don't know 10 or 20 million plays a month, something like maybe from Zed or something, like these just massive EDM festival tunes, right? And then if you go Shazam them, they're like, I don't know, it might be a billion, maybe that's exaggerating, but it's a lot of plays. And so I wonder consciously if any of those in 22 years, 25 years, let's say, would be remembered at all. For example, like the Donna Summer songs you said, or like a straight disco song like September. Like a lot of people may not know that song by me saying the title September, but you probably do. And that particular disco song definitely predates any partying I was doing. And every time I hear it, everybody in the room is moving and singing it. So that's really interesting.
Definitely. Well, I think Earth, Wind and Fire, again, there was so many groups in the 70s, and they were pioneering that sound. And again, it's influenced so much today, especially in the soulful house music, or the garage movement. Be it UK garage, which is obviously a little bit different to the US style, because obviously we have the US house and the US garage and the UK garage and house, and obviously there is a different sound, but it all comes again. It's all branched out from the original pioneers, like with Donna Summers and like you're saying, Earth, Wind and Fire, and then obviously it moved on. It moved on. We had obviously the hip hop and Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. In fact, funnily enough, when people say about what was the first rap song that was actually sort of crossed over into the charts, believe it or not, it was actually Blondie with Rapture, because she knew by Freddie and hang out with a lot of those people, and they were asking the DJ, what's the sound? What should I be doing? Something different, and that's where she got the idea from. So really, the first commercial rap record actually was from Blondie, which again people don't sometimes give credit for, but that's the evolution of music. It's always on the chain.
I'd go find it and play a clip, but we'll probably get our show banned.
Don't do it. I thought about it.
Dude, speaking of that, this is really funny. So the tabletop racing world tour game came out, as you know, and we talked about it some last week. And what's really funny is I didn't realize that all the gaming consoles have an incredibly easy, literally a button on the controllers where you can just hit share, and then of course if you're logged in it's automatic, but if you're not logged in then you get these options, for example, to broadcast on YouTube or Vimeo in some cases, or Steam or Twitch. These some are more gaming roots sort of broadcasting channels, and then some are like YouTube, right? And anyway, so the first week, I'm playing it, and I go share some video, and it's pretty cool. It works a lot like this with the Hangouts. So it's basically broadcasting live while you're playing. And, you know, if you don't invite anybody or you don't have any followers on your channel or your Google Plus page, then nothing will happen. But if you do, then they could watch if they wanted to, or if they just happen to find you. Anyway, so about the copyright thing, so there's like 28 songs on, you know, that are part of the game. And so what we did not expect was that the kids were going to all broadcast the game. So then it wasn't preventing them from broadcasting the game, but, you know, quite a few of them would get flagged with maybe one or two songs where some of the higher profile songs, like the Dub Pistols one, you know, just because of the way their music catalog is probably handled, some of those were flagged. And so kids would be getting this like the first time, and they wouldn't know what to do. So it was like tweeting and all this stuff. So I was like basically a little YouTube copyright support desk for a few days on Twitter. And that was a really interesting experience for me because, and I want to talk to you about social media for sure, because you're heavy in there. And that leading into this discussion was really interesting for me because I've never really used Twitter, for example, for much other than maybe repeating content that I put somewhere else, right? Like kind of broadcasting that out to my Twitter following, which is only like, I don't know, 700 people or something like that. So, you know, that was interesting because here they were they're like having discussions like, I don't know, in Twitter there is no privacy, right? So I just thought it was funny. It was like support desk over Twitter. I don't know. But what do you think about all the social media these days, man? Because that's like the whole opposite end of the spectrum from the time period you're giving us to when you got into music and clubbing.
Oh, definitely. It's changed so much. I think, you know, the social media now, especially, it has to be the way forward format-wise. You know, back in the late 90s when we was making records and trying to promote them, obviously the best avenue you would have is to either be in DJ or Mixmag or Generator at the time, you know, other popular magazines to do with dance culture. And obviously as a label or an artist, you know, you would have to spend sort of good money to have a quarter page or an advert in there. But that would be your marketing, you know, that would be your main avenue. Whereas obviously now, with paper production being so much less, and social media being available anywhere in the world, it makes it's a lot easier now for me to reach people who ordinarily I wouldn't be able to reach through the publications, which obviously are on a decline compared to social media. You know, DJ Magazine, Mixmag, they're all online. You can always see exactly what's in the magazine. Obviously, I prefer personally to have a magazine in my hand, the same as I prefer to have a vinyl, a bit of vinyl in my hand with a record cover that I can really get into with artwork, details on the label, the artist. Whereas now, obviously, it's so different. It's just a click, you buy it, you download it, and it's almost just scribbled on a CD if you're playing out. You know, there's no. It's all changed a lot, but for me, social media is such a good outlet because it means I can reach a lot of people who, without even being their friends ordinarily, I wouldn't be able to reach via the group pages. And as you know, I'm on probably 200 or 300 different group pages.
I don't know.
And as everyone knows who knows me, I do like to spam on 150 group pages a day to let everyone know what my artists are doing or what's coming out. And it is, you know, joking aside, it is a free way of me reaching people who I wouldn't ordinarily be able to reach, because the market with the magazine is obviously not so good as it was, you know, back in the day, because that was the only sort of avenue. That and the record shops where you would hang out and meet all the DJs, you know, from the area and chat, and you know, it's changed. But social media for me, I don't really use Twitter that much, if I'm honest. A lot of people, you know, they swear by it. I generally, you know, as Facebook's changed, as you know, over the last couple of years. If you want to promote to your,
I got a couple other points that I would like to discuss. I'm getting a little bit of this robot thing again, Chris. Let's try one more time. Just quick intermission. Let's just try real quick out and back in and see how long it'll last. Seems to last about 10 or 15 minutes before we get this problem again. If you don't mind. Yeah, hop out.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
We used to get the herb magazines.
Yeah.
And then it would have the CD with it, so we would listen to the CD, and also you'd have the herb magazine, but it'd always be like DJ rap or like somebody on the CD, and it was a little bit experimental though, so it'd be different types of genres and stuff. But we would always get the herb magazine, and we would wait every month to get the herb magazine.
Yeah, and like Future, I remember Future Music Magazine. It probably still comes out, but man, it's been a long time since I've looked at any kind of music magazine.
Right? True.
Seriously, certainly since I subscribed to a music magazine.
But I remember getting those CDs, and it would go in the car, and we would just listen to that for a month until the next one came out.
He's back.
He's back.
I just heard the tail end of that, Kelly. It sounds like, yes.
We were talking about getting magazines that had a CD on the cover. Remember that?
I would get the Herb magazine.
Yeah, of course. It was the same with DJ Mix Mag. There'd always be a compilation, a free one of the records of the time, or a label they were trying to promote who gave away some tracks. It was great. Those were the days. I used to love those.
It's absolutely crazy. I'm glad you brought that up, because it's absolutely crazy that you used to get, like, if it wasn't from friends, on a cassette, like, you used to get the way a DJ like Carl Cox got popular was, and I'm not saying this is the only way he got popular, but at that time, the way he became known, or Giles Peterson or something like maybe a bit more obscure than Carl Cox, was from a CD on a magazine. Yeah. How crazy is that?
Yeah.
That's how we knew about everyone. You know what? I think that cassette tapes are coming out again. I just found a cassette tape for 2 Chainz. Everyone seems to be handing out cassette tapes now. How do people play that?
Like, is it a cassette that looks like that's a USB drive? Because it's
an actual cassette tape. Unless there's a trick to it. I'm pretty sure it looks like a cassette tape to me.
Oh dear, cassette tapes. I have boxes of those back at home somewhere. Yeah. I must have done about 100 mixtapes, giving them out to people. Every week. I spent days just knocking out mixtapes to people, giving them out, and it was great. It was down the pub, everywhere. All your friends would have your mixtape. It was great. Technology has moved on so much.
Yeah. Hey, one of the Chris, one of the things on this panel that I spoke about, well, actually, it was one of the ones I listened to, was they were talking about the social media as we were, and then generally marketing spending. So you were talking about, something's free and it's just the resource time to do it. Perhaps that's yourself or some folks that help out. But I do think it's really interesting, and for people who listen to this, definitely, there's an audience of them that at least 5 that are interested in, how people navigate through the waters of change over time. And so for you, like, how do you handle your overall like marketing today, aside from just Facebook? Like, how do you look at, I've got a release and now I'm going to go promote this thing for the next month, let's say. So, like, walk me through, like, the details you're willing to share on the BadHabit magic.
Well, in all honesty, I think the whole reason we're doing well and sort of pushing forward with the label, coming up to our 4th year just as a label now, is the contacts I've built and the bonds that I've built in the past. So a lot of it's down to contacts that I've had in the past that have progressed on, and obviously in higher places when they started out. And so a lot of it for me is down to my links that I've built up over the years. You'll get the first promos, and regardless of getting the word genre, regardless of the DJ, everyone who I've built up a good relationship in the past with, musically, they will be the first people who get to hear the new sound. So it's for me, it's very much it's who you know. I think the business in music has always been who you know. So for me now, it's all about pushing the label and pushing the artists forward through social media, past links, and obviously Facebook is paid advertising. We utilise our website. And as I've said before, I think with social media, especially Facebook, by being involved in sort of hundreds of different group pages, it gives me a chance to reach out to a vaster audience that my friends list would allow me to. So, and also it's a free, to a degree, it's by posting through the group pages, you're hitting your targeted audience, and at the same time, you're getting a much better response. I find that when I actually use Facebook for promoting on new releases, it does give me the viral and the paid content, so I know how much my posting and promotions has been, and I can monitor that compared to the paid reach that I've paid for via Facebook. So for me, with a month of release, I would obviously send my promos out to the right people, or the contacts as I mentioned, and then hopefully we've already 2 months prior to that sent our promos out to DJ Mag, who support us very well, and we have a lot of entries in DJ Mag, so they would then be part of my promotional campaign that I could then use on links to promote the record, either pre-release via my SoundCloud or on an exclusive outlet, be it Track It Down, Beatport, or Juno or other. So leading up to my promo, leading up to the release date of the track, it would always be promos out to a select few, obviously DJ Mag, as I mentioned, and then the radio stations, and obviously emailing via the Labelworks promo manager, which again is a good outlet for me, which is our distribution company that we use. Again, we can't fault the people we deal with over here in the UK, from our distribution outlet with Labelworks to the exclusives that we always have with Track It Down, because again, it's all about the contacts that we built, and that's how I push my promo forward, really, through the links I've built in the past, and through social media, through the distribution companies who always push and promote our sounds and our artists, and then on the distribution side for the outlet, like Track It Down or Beatport. That's how I usually go around a promo. It's usually a 2-month campaign, from behind the scenes, from the start to release date.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's probably about what we do. We might do a little less than that, depending on how much time we had to plan with a particular, getting the final parts of some songs in or the artwork or whatever. But yeah, it's probably about a 2-month cycle. That makes sense. But yeah, good rundown on that. We're towards the end of that, or a little bit towards the middle, towards the end of it. I could understand what you're saying, but we're still having this problem with your audio. So I don't know. I guess we could try one more time, and then we might have to do a version 2 of it to get that sorted out. But if you don't mind dropping out one more time, Chris, and back in, and
no problem.
what happens. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll see you in a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. You're muted, Kelly. But yeah, I don't know what's going on with that.
I've been trying to just do a little bit of experimentation to change.
I think it's just his his connection is probably throttling him or something once he's on.
Yeah.
So it's not allowing the continuous stream.
Gosh.
So.
Okay. Well, he's back in.
How we doing? Can you see me? Hear me?
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, man, you're solid. You're solid. It sounds like your internet provider or whoever that studio is that you're at. It sounds like they want to give you about 2 minutes of euphoria before you turn into a robot.
I feel so bad because we both look and we're like, oh.
But well, hopefully, I can follow what you're saying because I have some familiarity with it already. But hopefully, others can still hear enough. We'll press on, see how it goes. Nothing like an intermission every 5 minutes. Well, hey, outside of music, I know you do some you do some other things outside of music. A little bit we've talked about. I don't know, maybe some of the old school stuff, since we're on the old school vibe, like skateboarding and BMXing and that kind of stuff. I don't know if you want to share some of that kind of thing. It's always interesting how that goes along with music to me and people who are in music.
Definitely. Well, it was always for me, especially from being a youngster into my music, and BMXing when it hit the UK, obviously being an American invention which came across the pond, as most things do. It was my life and soul, really, when I was a youngster, and I've always liked the idea of the tricks which could be achieved, which at the time was something sort of very extraordinary. Now you take it for granted when you see a lot of the Red Bull or the X Games and the guys doing sort of 20-foot jumps off the half pipes, etc. You know, it's a different world now. But back in the day when you could go along on a BMX and sort of, you're familiar with the bunny hop, but to do a 360, to sort of be cycling along and to lift a bike and do a 360-degree turn would really freak people out. Or even bunny hopping over some of your school friends. They'd have 7 friends laying down, you'd cycle along and lift the bike over them. And at the time, because it was new, it was great, because it was something new and fresh. And again, yeah, oh great. Oh, that's a great picture. Oh, wow.
You know what, Chris? That's what comes up when I Google image Chris Nurding BMX.
Wow.
Yeah, dog.
Wow. Wow. So, but yeah, that was very funny. But I've never seen that, to be honest. So that's quite a shock. But yeah, it's really. It was,
we Google other things on your interests.
It's weird with my second name. I think there's about 3 or 4 of the same family name. I know there's a couple of Chris Nurdings out in America. I've actually sent them a personal message to say hi. Obviously, we're related somewhere along the line. There's only probably 4 of us in the world. So it's going back to the BMXing. Again, prior to that, it was skateboarding in the early 70s, which came across again. And anything which was cool, skateboarding, BMXing, music, I've always really been into just having a chilled out lifestyle, to be honest with you, and enjoying sport. And obviously BMXing was a big part of my life. I didn't make a sort of a full career out of it, but a lot of my friends who I was with at the time went on to do very, very well. And in fact, the legend of BMX in the UK
did you ever
just turned. Sorry.
I said, did you ever compete?
Did I ever compete? I was more into tricks. I did compete. I used to. And so yeah, it was okay. I wasn't really so much a racer. I was more about the tricks.
Got it.
It was for me always about the tricks, because it was the fun and doing something different. Racing, people were more. Probably more aggressive, really. I didn't have that aggressive streak in me, to want that to be the be-all and end-all of what I was doing. To me, it was all about the fun, the freestyle.
When did that develop in the UK? I'm assuming you were in the UK at this time. So when did that develop, BMXing in particular, and then that, for us, that led into kind of X Games and other things, or joined with other sports that were rising. So, but when did the BMX kind of get big, or has it ever been big there? I don't know. Like here, we've got time.
It's been very big for many years. Obviously, like most trends, they go through cycles in decades. But it's with the Olympic Games, a couple of years back now, held in London, we had BMXing for the first time, as an Olympic sport, and it now is an Olympic sport. So we're really pleased. It's obviously probably 30, 40 years overdue, but or 30 years overdue. But it really hit, BMXing really hit around about 1980 for most people.
1980.
And that's when we went from having an old bike with what we used to call cow horns with long handlebars. So we had a racer, and we used to have longer handlebars and take it over, over the park and over what we called like the common. But then when BMXing first arrived, there were smaller, lighter, more agile bikes. Again, best times of our lives. So 1980s was the time. 82, 83, 84. That's when BMXing was probably at its pinnacle in the UK.
Huh. Cool. Interesting. I think that's probably about when it really, plus or minus a couple of years when it really got big over here, it was never really looked very highly upon. It was kind of thrown in with skateboarding, and then that was lumped in with you know kids that do drugs, and marijuana leads to crack cocaine, and all this stuff. So that's always kind of been up until maybe the late 90s. Then it got a whole different thing with it seemed like an emergence of like 89, 90, 91. It seemed like along with some really big sort of, I call them alternative, I guess, music festivals like Lollapalooza and things like that, and resurgence of some attempts at Woodstock and whatnot, like this kind of counterculture and tattooing and ink, and a lot of these things were in together, and marijuana and all this were kind of got a resurgence right around that time frame. And then I guess people like Sprite or Mountain Dew realized they could make money because all these people were going to come out and hear bands like Pearl Jam or Red Hot Chili Peppers or whatever, and then it changed. So I guess that I don't know, that's interesting. Like that also came up this weekend. Some was this concept of things get big, like EDM right now. If you just look at that as electronic dance music overall, it's big, right? And so then all this money comes into it. And then there's the downsides of that, I guess, if you're not the guy at the top, maybe getting the top, pay, if that's what you're after. But I think collectively it brings everything up. I mean, there's so much opportunity with electronic music today, I believe. I mean, what do you think? I mean, are you seeing that, or do you feel like the growth of it has, made it vanilla and washed it out, and there's no room for, anything, the top or zero?
Well, I think, to be honest with you, I think it's still really big and growing. I think especially from the UK perspective, we went through hard times back in the early, in the noughties. It was 2002, 2003. The club scene was quite on its feet. A lot of clubs were closing down, but I think in a whole, it's been progressing, especially the last couple of years, where it seems to be more of the fashion for the festival, especially along the summer seasons now, and more people are going to festivals now, and a lot of people are coming out who ordinarily got bored of clubs. They grew up, they got married, they settled down, but now the festival seems to be the real big thing at the moment. There's over 10 massive, or so I think it's 16 really big festivals that happen in the UK that all have over 10,000 people attend.
What are the big?
They're making money. Sorry?
What are the biggest festivals in the UK? Like, what's the scoop on the 3 or 4? I mean, I sit here and talk about the big ones here as if people would all know, but I realize that's not the case. You could have a 100,000 person festival, and someone over in the UK may not be aware of that, right? So I'm not really aware of a lot of the UK festivals. I'm curious what some of those are, whether they're new or have been running for 20 years.
Yeah, well, I think there's two angles to this, with the actual underground dance scene with festivals, and obviously the crossover style with obviously Woodstock in America. We have Glastonbury, which has been going again for decades, but obviously the format's changed over the years. From back in the 60s and the 70s, where it was more hippie orientated, right, as it was over in the States with Woodstock. It's progressed an awful lot more now. You've got a lot of popular artists across a wide range playing at Glastonbury now, and Glastonbury is such a big thing. That's just talking about one that's still been going all these years. They have headliners like Coldplay and anyone from Beyonce. Everybody is covered, but there's different genres still holding to the original sound, which is obviously more of the hippie sound or the dance culture sound. There's how
many people go to that? What's the attendance on that, Chris? What's the attendance on that?
I would hate to guess, but it's got to be 70, 80, 100,000 maybe. I think it's over 3 or 4 days. It's immense, and the BBC cover it on telly every year. It's really recognised now. It's our main festival. If anyone in English culture, Glastonbury is the festival of music that everyone knows. you know. But obviously, the subcultures of that we have within our dance music scene. We have.
35,000. It was 130. I was waiting on Kelly for to do sleuthing. Her.
All right.
By the way, Kelly, you know this, but Kelly's Kelly's artist DJ artist handle is Agent137. So she's not only technical, working out technical things busily, but also Agent137ing in the background, where there's factoids that neither you or I are sure of or are too lazy to go find.
We have Boomtown also. I was thinking Glastonbury. Isn't that June, like 22nd? It's coming up soon.
It's 135,000 people were in attendance for the 2015. Let's say for full attendance, this, that, and the other. So that's big, I wonder what I want to say. And at the one weekend festival, is that right, Chris?
Sorry.
That's at Glastonbury.
Echo One Festival.
It's a one weekend festival. It's like over a weekend.
I believe, yeah. I think it might well be for a week, but I think it's a week or a weekend. I'm not too sure. Like I say, there's so many festivals. I haven't actually been to Glastonbury myself. A couple of our artists were playing there the other year. The Radio Killers were playing, I believe, last year. But it's a real big deal in the UK. Although, again, the format has changed over the years. But to me, it's more about the underground festivals which are going on, which are pushing the culture of the UK sound.
Real quick before you hit the underground festival thing. So, as a comparison, for all intelligent and educated listeners, as a comparison, EDC Vegas, there's more than one of them, but the EDC Vegas, which is the granddaddy of them, in 2015 drew more than 400,000 people.
Wow.
That's insane. And like in 2011, it drew 230,000 people. So when I don't know, maybe all the electronic music money in the country is going to Vegas for EDC week. I don't know. That could be the case. But that's a lot of growth. And so, when people talk to me about, whatever, this, that, the other, popular whatever it is, right? That's all electronic music. That's an all electronic music festival, EDC is. Like, to my knowledge, I don't think there's any non-electronic music acts that are there. Some are live, some are DJs, some are hybrids, whatever. But I don't think there's any Coldplay or Jay-Z or, any draws like that.
Yeah.
They were sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Kelly.
They were just talking to the CEO of Insomniac, and they were talking about New York EDC, and I think it was 400 or 450,000 in Las Vegas, and they were talking about like what the resurgence of genres were, and not to get back to the whole genre hole, but breakbeat was one of the ones mentioned, and I thought that was like everybody's talking about that on social media today, but it was on CNBC on Squawk Box, which is kind of a little bit of a I don't know, more important money type discussion, if you will. So they were talking about how much money they make. He's like, I do.
I think CNBC is strictly a business channel. So
right. Yeah, Squawk Box is they tell you what stocks to go into and so forth. So they had him online, or they had him as an interview.
I saw some bits and pieces on social media about that. That's Pasquale, right?
Pasquale, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Rotella, I think, is his last name. Funny story about him. I don't know him, but I was in Vegas 2 years ago, and I was at a club, and I was looking for someone to take a picture, and I turned around and I said, I just introduced myself to this guy that was standing there. He was waiting on somebody, and then I turned around and I was like, "Oh, hi," and I just introduced myself, said, "Hey," real quick, and then I said, "Would you mind taking a picture of me and a couple friends?" He was like, "Yeah, no problem at all," and he took a picture, and then he went to walk away, and they were like, "Do you know who that guy is?" And I was like, "Yeah, he's Pasquale," And I just met him, and they're like, yeah, he's like the guy that started EDC. I'm like, oh. But you know, I mean, my point, I guess, the only point I had in any of that was that he was very cool, very very friendly. I'm sure he's inundated with things from all angles, and but he was standing there and had time to take a picture. I thought it was kind of interesting.
He said he started as a raver, that he just was a fan, and this is what he ended up doing and building up. So, just think of, going to a party as a raver, or whatever you want to call it nowadays, and ending up the CEO of Insomniac.
Yeah. Why not?
Why not? Go for the gold.
Chris,
I think we all started.
That brings up an interesting point, Chris. That brings up an interesting point. Is there, he's a bit of a social media personality. I mean, he's pretty accessible. He's out there. You can find him. I'm curious, like, do you know, are any of the festival, organizers, promoters in the UK, sort of also public figures, like the people that have started and run them for all these years?
Not really. There's a few there, but I think over in the UK, especially predominantly from the house music scene, really, it's mainly the DJs who are pushing the sound, or there at the first or at the start to push the sound. They're the ones who have got a bit of the celebrity status. More so than the promoters.
Well, who would be the most recognizable then in that DJ? The front men, so to speak, for the popular electronic music. Like who are the current, like, the front men, I guess, from the UK?
What from the pioneering from the house sound, or at the moment?
No, just at the moment that that people would think about or likely know if you said, oh, what kind of music you're into? Electronic music. Oh, do you know so and so? Like who would people know? Like who would be kind of the figure? What do you call that? Like the figurehead, or the face, in front of, like, the scene, yeah. Right?
Well, for the genre EDM, I suppose, from the crossover commercial sort of, when you go in your car, or if you're at work, or wherever you are listening to the radio, generally speaking, yeah. From a sort of crossover EDM perspective, you'd have to say and take your hats off to people like David Guetta in France. He's been going for the last, well, he's a DJ of probably 25 years, the same as myself. But he's obviously become much more popular and known over the last sort of 5, 6, 7 years. And he's really him, Martin Garrix, from across over in Holland. And these guys, really, they're the sound that you will hear from the EDM perspective.
Yeah.
Over here. Well, they're the main sort of headliners. But they're obviously not what we follow as such, but that's the more popular end of what you would say, from the English perspective of what EDM is. You'd probably, David Guetta would be probably one of the people who's, the main sound behind that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, he's been pretty big for a while over here. I think right now, probably if you asked, like, my mom or someone's cousin who doesn't have any much to do with electronic music, they would the exposure, I think, would be someone like Skrillex, or maybe Deadmau5 by way of Skrillex, which is ironic in saying that, because here things tend to, it seems to be, if you've won a Grammy, then it's pretty likely someone will probably know your name, because maybe your face was in the newspaper, or is repeatedly in the newspaper, or something like that. But the average person doesn't follow a billion things on Twitter, you know what I mean? Like the average person walking around that's not really into music. So if you ask somebody, like, and that's why I was thinking, kind of like Pasquale, like that Kelly noting that that's on Squawk Box, on CNBC, a business thing. You just don't see that all that often. But I do think it's interesting, though. There's a lot of good, smart people out there that have been doing this for a long time, both in, here and North America, UK, everywhere, whatever. So I think it's interesting that some of them are still around and doing things, and I think it's interesting that they're, kind of putting a, really a good, they're just being themselves, but putting a really good face on what it's really all about. There's a lot of people in the underground. There's a lot of people in the underground that give a lot of boo hiss to Insomniac and EDC and stuff like that. But I'll tell you, I wouldn't be running around the country playing parties if those guys hadn't gotten so big.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like give a variety of opportunities or breadcrumbs, if you will, for the underground to even exist. You know, that's how I see it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you see it that way, but
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's right. But like you say, you just mentioned Deadverse. Yeah, from the more cooler underground perspective, obviously these are the guys who are playing the cool underground parties as well. So they're the main name brands. I was more talking about the mainstream popular sound of EDM would be covered by them. But obviously the cooler sound that people from your universities and colleges were brought up on sound-wise. It's obviously for them now. It's deadmau5 and people like that who, you know, they're creating a good sound that we all like. You know, they've got that perfect ingredient where they can be popular but still be cool and underground, because it's a very, very, very hard thing to actually catch, because we've had this many conversations.
Well, you're so right, because you know, coming from and Kelly on this one too. I mean, coming from anywhere, say, more than 10 years back in the music scene. I mean, if you in some cases, if you like got paid, it was like selling out, you know? So it's crazy to hear we're having this conversation, aside from talking about compact discs on the front of magazines. To me, it's crazy that, you know, the three of us, you know, we've all experienced where, you know, like you would be afraid to have a song on radio. I mean, you would be petrified, man. 10 years ago, maybe a little more than that, right? Like, you all remember those days, right? Like, you'd talk to DJs and producers, and like the last thing they would want in most circles would be any kind of like, you know, a car company to ask them to do a commercial or a video game,
Right?
right?
That's right. How ironic, you know. But it's so true. You know, I think time has changed. You know, it really has, and I think everything evolves in its own way. And you know, I've had this conversation many a time with a lot of my guys and friends who have been in the music industry for a long time, pushing the underground sound, and I've said it's hitting that fine line. You know, it's cool to be underground, but generally speaking, if you cross over where it's more commercial, i.e. popular, pop music, that really is where the money is. And, you know, it's, as they say, it's all cool to be underground, but generally it doesn't pay the bills. So
yeah, I mean, and just the fact that you can be both now, I think, is crazy. Like, maybe you could be both back before, I don't know, but I know that if somebody had won a Grammy and then came to play a couple 100-person party in what was the traditional underground that I was used to, I'm not sure anybody would go. Well, someone would go, but it probably wouldn't be the people that are usually at that event. Just really interesting times. I mean, I'm glad it's the way it is now. I think I prefer it the way it is now. So I think that's pretty interesting. But speaking of what's we went way to the top, like of the chain. But so what's hot outside of the big main EDM stuff? Like, what's going on? I know we talked a little bit about that stuff over the last few weeks. But what artists, DJs, producers, like, what's the scoop on what you're seeing out there in the underground? We'll just go with the underground.
Yeah, well, at the moment, to be honest, I think in the UK it's always had such a bubbling, diverse underground scene. But it's, for me, the UK garage scene.
Oh, wait!
You went robot again.
We made it almost 15 minutes before you went robot. But
it was perfect until then.
Hop out. It was perfect timing. Hop out and back in and tell us who's cracking, who's got it going on.
Okay, I'll call you back, and
okay.
I'll refresh.
Okay.
Perfect.
I'll tell you what. The moment for me is when Dirty Vegas and Days Gone By, the Mitsubishi commercial. Remember the girl that was flowing in the car?
Oh, yeah.
It was one of those moments where it didn't really cross over into the mainstream at all, and it was kind of one of those things that we really hoped that it would become popular. And I think that at some point we all kind of went, wait a second, it's gotten way too much, But I think that was, or like the Powerpuff Girls.
It's funny. I mean, it's funny because there's an attachment, and I get it. We've all had it, but I mean, when I saw like Fatboy Slim's Right About Now, I don't remember if that was the name of the song or was called something else. I can't remember now. But anyway, when it was in that Mountain Dew commercial, and I just thought to myself, man, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't know that I even thought about Mountain Dew at all, but obviously I still remember it. So I guess I haven't drank a Mountain Dew in a long time, unless, well, I was gonna say unless it was in a mixed drink or something, but I can't even say that.
I'm pretty sure I bought a Mitsubishi after that. So, Chris, we were talking about Days Gone By, the Dirty Vegas song. Do you remember that when it was in a Mitsubishi commercial?
Yeah, I think I might have seen that.
I'm going way back here, but that was kind of like the crossover for me, where we were like, oh wow, EDM is in the mainstream. You know, that was it.
What so go ahead, Chris. You're back and you're clear. Go continue with your who's hot, who's not, maybe, or just who's hot.
Yeah, well, from a musical sound of what's happening over in the UK, you know, I think again the UK garage sound, which is predominantly based around the London area. That's the last couple of years. It's really progressing. You know, there's lots of people getting back out there again, into the vibe. Drum and bass is still a very big sound in the UK. It's still, you know, people like Chris and Chris are out there week in, week out throughout the world. You know, really busy. You know, making good money. Old school, as I mentioned, with Slipmat, they're still the underground rave scene, still vibrant and happening. And from a house perspective, house has always probably been the biggest sound in the UK, and it's never really got out of fashion. It's diverse into different genres. Again, that word genres, but it's, you know, it's diverse into deep house or soulful house or, you know, EDM, whatever. The fact is, you know, it's still really big. And artists for me at the moment, in fact, talking the main people over in the UK, really pushing the sounds for me house-wise. You've got a lot of people like Du Bois, who's on our label, who runs Fourth Quarter, and Frank Star. They're pushing out a lovely, nice sound. You know, they're ones to watch. A really good label as well.
Who was that?
Du Bois, spelt D-A and then B-O-Y-Z-E. He's part of the BadHabit crew. He's on the agency, but runs his own label as well. He's always supported our events, and he was at the festival last year and other events in Brighton that we've done. He's got a good sound, so he's one to.
I'm gonna check it out. Just so you know. I'm gonna check it out. Just so you know. He's also a
you know, they're riding high in Beatport at the moment. Fourth Quarter, they've got a record out. So Du Bois over in the UK, him and Frank Star are ones to watch. Also, Lee Gardner, who's one of my best friends, who's been producing again and a DJ for many a year. He's putting out some good stuff at the moment, and very solid on the remix. And over in America, Brandon Morales, he's, again, production-wise, he's one to watch in the house scene, stepping in his father's shoes. You know, the legend that is David Morales. His son Brandon is really coming through. He's going through the ropes, building himself up. Solid production, superb DJ. So from that side of scene in the house, that's where I'm looking at the moment. I think from the breaks side of things, Strange Rollers and 100ME, again, guys who we support on our label. And in fact, Strange Rollers was one of the reasons I got back into the label. They're creating such a diverse sound, but keeping that old school format of the breakbeat sound that we liked back in the 90s, but keeping it fresh and moving forward with garage influence, hip hop influences. You know, I love the fact that we can have so much diversity, and we're quite blessed on the label, especially, to have these artists on board with us. So I don't actually, in all fairness, I don't get a lot of time to actually look at outside what my artists are doing, because we've got so many talented people on board that you know, it's easy to miss, you know, a lot of the new names who are bubbling out there, because I'm generally concentrating on the guys on board with us. So so that's more of the UK sound. I have to give shouts out to your man Otter. He's had coming up to 3 releases now with us, and he is definitely one to watch. So hats off to Otter. He really is blending the breaks with the garage sound. A lot of DJ Mag success. In fact, I was hit up the other week from one of the editors from DJ Mag, saying, you know, when's the next tracks coming out on Bad Habit Viota, because they're loving the sound. So you know, he's definitely one to watch. And obviously yourself, without a shadow of a doubt, we've known ourselves what, a couple of years now.
Yeah.
And I have to say, the diversity of the sound that you've been creating, and just the energy that you guys have been pushing since I've known you, and you've done, you know, finished your tour last year. I've never seen anyone work so hard, you know, in a long time. And as they say in life, you get out what you put in, and your sound and your links and everything that you're doing at the moment, especially with the TTR racing now. That's all the young kids are going to be hearing the Wes Smith sound. It's a great time. It's a great time. We've got a lot of talented people around us. We're very, very blessed to have artists like Danny B in America, who's more gospel. Again, she covers over the garage sound for us, as well as house. There's, you know, we have hip hop artists with the Imperial Brothers, and not forgetting obviously Curious and Apex One in LA, just around the corner from yourself, pushing the drum and bass scene.
Right.
Really, we're very much a family with the different sounds we have, and it's really my artists that I'm pushing more. I don't actually get time to listen further afield to what other people are doing, really, because I'm too busy concentrating on the good talent and friends we have within the circle that, you know, that is Bad Habit Music. But I don't do this on my own. You know, we have a lot of people involved behind the scenes who make this happen. I might be the face of it, or the one who, as you know, spams on Facebook or on social media. I get the brunt of all the spamming and get all the complaints for obviously promoting too much. But you know, I'm the face of it. I take the slack for them. But it's all about pushing the artists, and we've got such good artists involved, and we've got a good circle, you know, branching out.
You know, yeah, I mean, and that's awesome. That's awesome stuff. It's nice that you're as in tune with the promotion of your artist as you are. You know, beyond that, you know, so many people asked me questions this weekend. This was a 3-day music festival here in San Diego called West Coast Weekender, and I believe it was quite successful. I believe it was definitely a lot of fun and a lot of people. So I think it'll continue to go. They're basically trying to craft, you know, an annual, and I would imagine it'll at least have a second year based on the first year. Kind of like what was originally WMC in Miami, that kind of vibe, and it was great. So, but that's where all these panels were, what I keep referring to, just to fill in the dots here for anyone referencing these panels and parties from this past weekend. But that was one of the topics, you know, and it is just how people get somebody's attention with all this social media and all this whatever. And the reality is, I mean, kind of my answer to a lot of that was, you know, it takes time for sure, patience, meeting people, and it's really, I think, like you said, at the end of the day, it's definitely if possible, a face-to-face, like interhuman connection. If that's not possible, then, you know, phone calls. Like we've had a number of phone calls over time, right? And we don't even do any business together, really, you know. And we have some calls, you know, and even like this, it just creates a different connection between people. And I think for anybody who's trying to figure out, you know, how do I navigate, you know, whatever it is, a couple billion people online, it's the same amount of, I mean, well, it's not the same amount of people, but I mean, largely, I don't know what the population was 10 years ago of the Earth, but my guess is it's not dramatically, it's not like 10 times today. So the point in that is that the struggle has always been the same, really. It doesn't change. It's all, you can only, as a human, you can only deal with so much information and with so many individual people at any one given time. And if nothing else, that doesn't change, right? Like because Twitter's there or Facebook's there, and you can have a technical connection to somebody, that doesn't mean that your individual or humans' individual ability to have good relationships with more people is the case, you know. And in fact, I firmly believe it's not. I just don't believe all the technology. I agree. I don't believe that helps you have more meaningful relationships. I think it may help you find the seeds to what may become a meaningful relationship. But other than that, I don't think it does much for building the actual relationships that will, come back to you like a lot of the ones you're talking about over time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a different time now. And like you're saying, everything's very, very quick, and having X amount of friends on Facebook or maxing your 5,000 to your account. That doesn't mean 5,000 people are going to be supporting and buying your music or your artist's music. It's very, very easy, as I say, to click like on Facebook if you're attending an event, for example, and you can put on an event and have 500 or 1,000 people saying they're attending, but that doesn't necessarily mean on the day that they're going to get out of their seat, get into the car and drive there. It's so different. So you've got to look at the marketing way on social media with a pinch of salt, because it's not always 100%, as you know, real. But we use it for what we can, and it's a great outlet. But again, one to be cautious of. As with all social media, you've got to be quite careful with it.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, I got one more thing before we get towards the end of hanging out. I got one more thing, but I gotta get you to do one more exit and back in for the robot stretch, hopefully.
Okay. I'll see you in a minute.
Come right back.
All right. Well, let's talk about next time on the Variety Show. We have Eric Wave Horror.
Oh, he is awesome.
In New York City. That is confirmed. Also, this weekend I'm playing at Costume Cult at Slake. It is a Burning Man camp fundraiser.
Sweet.
137.
Awesome.
But yeah, Eric is confirmed.
Cool.
We may do that on location of the boat, both him and I. I don't know. I haven't exactly confirmed that with him yet.
Perhaps the distance, who knows what, we get some feedback things. Maybe we'll have some little
North Brooklyn, South Brooklyn.
Research.
The world away.
Chris, you're back.
Yeah, we're here.
Okay, we're just cutting. We're just cutting.
No.
Clap. I need one of those little things.
A clap.
On that note, man, we talked a lot about music and other stuff, and aside from our technical difficulties, I did want to hear a little bit about what you're doing outside of music more currently versus your BMX and maybe skateboarding days. What you travel a lot. You seem to me to be a guy that's pretty educated. He gets around, curious, interested in the world. So share a little bit of what's been going on. Maybe the last year or so that's along those lines. The real Chris.
Oh, right. Well, in the last year, lots of changes happened. I suppose from a personal perspective, me and my partner, I'm over in the UK now, more on a full-time basis than being back in France at the house. So for me, lots have changed. I think, especially where music, as you know, you can work so hard. I think up until a year or two ago, I was working nearly 18 hours a day, just flat out, day in, day out on music. And as with all things, you just need sometimes to have a time out. And especially as you get older, with myself, family life and looking after my folks and thinking of my son. For me now, it's a bit more of a different job as I'm getting older, coming up to a big number this year for myself. So it's yes, definitely a big number. So for me, there's been a lot of change in the last year, and I think it's more about sort of building on my family, but still obviously pushing the label, enjoying the hobbies. As you said, I love travelling, and hope to be back over to the States fairly soon. I was actually talking to George earlier, curious, talking about next year for the events with the I Love LA parties, which him and Apex One do, and we were fortunate enough to be invited over, which is where we met your man Otter, amongst others. And
did you really?
So I think.
Did you guys meet in person there?
It wasn't at the. Sorry, I do apologise. It wasn't at the I Love LA. We actually met down in San Diego. with DJ Archon with his birthday party, which was invited to go and play on the BadHabit tour, and that's where I met Otter. Otter was obviously playing down at the Carver Club, the Carver Lounge, I believe it's called.
Yeah. Cool. I didn't realize you guys had met, but I think that further substantiates how people end up working together.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And in fact, it was Otter who again put me in contact with yourself and was saying, I said to him, do my research. I said, well, who's holding it down sort of over in the States? And apart from obviously the Beatport side of things, which you hold the crown, it was more who's actually holding it down locally, and that's why your name was obviously brought up in the first instance, which got us in the communication. So yeah, it's
tells you how long that's been. I couldn't remember the actual origin, but I'm glad you did. you get the memory award for today.
I can assure you I don't usually, but yeah.
No, I don't either. It's okay.
Nice. Anything else? Anything else personal or otherwise that you kind of want to shout out there that as we get kind of wrap up and move on? I got jellyfish to build.
Yeah, no worries. Well, really, I've got to go through all the guys who are part of the label, who are behind the scenes. Tarek, I want to say big shout out to Tarek. He holds down the BadHabit Music Show, which is again it's a format of multi-genre sounds, whatever's good and new, as well as our own tracks and tracks of yourself and other genres.
Cool.
Tarek holds the BadHabit Music Show down for us. Rob, who runs Sonic Zoo, he's my brother really. He's part of BadHabit behind the scenes. He deals with all the litigation with all the contracts. I've got to say big shout out to Ross. He's again more of an advisor as well as one of our DJs. Tasha, who's over in America, part of Tribe Steppers. I've got to give him a big shout because he deals with our artwork and he's based in LA, part of the drum and bass scene, and works with Formation Records as well in the UK. So shouts to him. Obviously Lee, I've given a shout to, and I just have to say, I've got an event that I'm playing at 29th, which is the Bank Holiday Sunday coming the end of May, where Lee has his event called Jam, and I'll be laying down some old school, a new school Ibiza laid back chilled sounds for a barbecue. So nice. Everyone who's around the Chelmsford area, get yourself at the Kingpin bar, people who can attend. And really, that's about it. Really, everyone who's supported the label over the last 4 years, and from family and friends, and general music lovers. I just want to thank everyone. And lastly, I'd like to thank yourself for getting us involved in your It's Where Smithy Old, the remix album, the Volume 1.
Yeah, man, that was
obviously the Volume 2's out. Volume 2's obviously out at the moment, but it was obviously an honour and a pleasure for me and Richie, Strange Rollers, to get involved on the remix of Hands Up.
Yeah,
and obviously which had good success over in the UK as well as over in America.
Yep.
So yeah, it's all getting well together, and we've got a good group of friends, and long may it will continue. And I'd like to thank everyone for the support.
Cool, man. Well, awesome, man. I'm gonna, hopefully we get to meet in person, whether that's on your side or our side of the pond, but do let me know. As I've talked to you already, there may be some opportunity for me to be over that way later in the year, and if you get over here, give me some heads up.
Yeah.
San Diego's always a good time. It's easy to get up to LA, no problem, and we'll be sure and do this again. With maybe a little bit less roboto, but no big deal. And I'm in the middle of this jellyfish project. If you haven't seen me blasting it around, then you'll get the full scoop soon.
I've seen that.
In the game and all this stuff and the stories behind it. But otherwise, man, thanks for spending the time and whatnot. And rock out with whatever you're doing. And Kelly, I will see you later as well. And we have our show ending. I don't know if Kelly told you, but anyway, 1, 2, 3. Stay
Yeah.
classy, yo. I think I'm by myself, but anyway, stay classy, yo. Talk to you soon.
Bye, guys. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks again.
Or day for you, Wes.
See ya.